Very often, even in your personal computers, the laptops or the computers that you use at home, even in those personal computers also, you would like to have more than one file system. So what are the various reasons we want to have more than one file system is, sometimes we want to differentiate the types of files. Sometimes the files related to some work are very much related or very much closely related, that we want to separate them completely from the other types of file systems and put it separately. So there are various reasons why we want to separate the files completely. In that case, what we want to do is, in the same computer we would like to have more than one file system. One file system will contain completely different types of files, and the other file system will contain completely different types of files. This type of dividing has been used long back, but recently the reason why we are going for more than one file system in the same computer is because we want to use more than one operating system. And when you are using more than one operating systems, the Windows operating system might not understand the files which are created by Linux, and the Linux might not understand the format of the files which are created by Windows, right? So when you have various operating systems working on the same computer, then you might have to use different file systems in such a way that that particular operating system will be able to understand it. So how is this particular concept implemented is, see, the practical part that varies from hardware to hardware, but here we are only looking at the theory. So whatever we discuss here in this course is only theoretical perspective. We are not going to take any case. So let us just put it to theory. Now if you assume that this is our hard disk. Now this hard disk, you can think of it as a continuous array of bytes. So you can partition it. So the most common terminology used here is partitioning. So what we do is, we partition the hard disk into various partitions depending on how many operating systems or how many file systems you would like to have. For example, if you want to have two file systems, then you can make it into two partitions. You can also tell your hardware how much space you want to allocate for the first partition and how much space you want to allocate for the second partition. See, there are various terminologies used here. Some people use partitions, and some people use the name volumes, and some people use the name mini disk. So whatever the name used, the concept is dividing the hard disk or the available memory in the hard disk into various parts, and then allocating each part to a file system, right? Now this particular part can be allocated to one file system and the other part can be allocated to other file system. Now when you are trying to access this file system, how do you know how many files are there and what are the names of the files and where are these files located? For example, you can have a file 1 here, right, and then file 2 here, and then file 3 here. So how do you know that this is the starting of the file and this is the ending of the file? You are supposed to save all this information, right? So for that reason, every partition is supposed to have at least one special type of file which is called as directory. So the beginning of the starting of the file system will be dedicated to something called as directory. Now what is a directory is, the simple way you can assume it is, a directory is a kind of translation table which translates the file name into all the information required to access it. For example, we remember only the file names. Let us say I want to see a picture which is called ravi.jpg, right? So let us say it is a picture. Now if you want to see that picture, you are supposed to know where it is present, the location, and what is the size of it, till what part it is present, so that you can retrieve it and then look at it, right? So the entire data related to this file will also be kept in the entry called as the directory entry. Are you getting it? If you want to observe it, see this. Now let us say this is the hard disk, and now we are dividing the hard disk into various partitions, right? And now each partition will have a different file system. For example, this is the file system which is related to Windows, and this is the file system which is related to Linux. Therefore, when you use Windows operating system while booting up, then it will use this part of the hard disk, and when you use Linux, it will use this part of the hard disk, because the operating system code, or every operating system will have its own code to access the file system, and it will be different from implementation to implementation. Therefore, you cannot have a simple or a single file system and have various operating systems. Got it? Now every file system is supposed to have at least one file called as the directory. Now this directory is also a special type of file which will contain information about the files. You can think of it as the metadata. The data about the data is metadata, isn't it? Now the files are present here, all the files are present here. The information about these files is present in the directory, in simple words, isn't it? Now these directories are going to contain the entries, right? And each entry is going to say what is the file name, and then what is its location. Let us say it is located in some block, let us say block number 100. I hope you know about the blocks. In case if you don't know, later we shall see what about the blocks. And then what is the size of it. Let us say the size of it is 1024 something. All the, when is it created, who created it, what are the access rights, everything will be present here. Got it? So directory is in simple sense a file which will contain information about all the files, and every file system is supposed to have at least one directory, otherwise it will be very difficult for us to access the files. Now what are the operations that a directory should support? So what do you want to do on this directory is simple. First thing is, you might want to search whether a file is present or not, and the second thing is you might want to create a file, or third thing is you might want to delete a file. Fourth thing is you might want to see what are all the files that are present in this directory, or in case if there is only one directory in the file system, you can say that what are all the files that are present in this file system. You might want to look at it. In that case, you might want to write something called as list all the files that are present in this directory. And what is the other thing that you might have to do? Let us say you want to traverse. So traversing is something which will be required when you have more than one level of directory, right? So these are the basic operations you might want to. Okay, one more operation is also there, something called as renaming the file, right? So there are various operations you might want to do on the directory. These are all the operations. And now the directory itself can sometimes become too big. In case if you have millions of files or billions of files in a file system, then it might be very difficult for you to save all the names of the files and information about them in one single file, right? In that case, the best thing is to go for levels. If you have only one directory and all the other files, it is called as single level directory, right? Single level directory. If you have various levels, then it is called as multi-level directory. In simplest form, you can have a two-level directory or a tree type directory. So I'll tell you about all these things in detail. I'm just telling you what are the various types of directory structures that exist. One is you can have a single level directory, and the other one is you can have multi-levels. Multi-levels means there will be the root directory, and then there will be many directories, subdirectories in it, and finally there will be files, or even there can be many directories, right? If you have only two levels of directories, then it is called as two level directory. If you have multi levels of directories, it is called as tree level directory. And sometimes in a tree you try to avoid the cycles, and you might have to sometimes create a graph without a cycle. That is called as acyclic graph. Acyclic graph directories. I'm just listing down the names, and exact details about all these directories we shall see about it. and other one is graph. So we shall see what are all the types of directories which are under implementation, the theoretical side, and we shall discuss about what are the advantages and disadvantages when you choose one type of directory implementation over the other. Okay.